Okay. Okay. What are you doing, D? Taking a poop. Start in the morning with a nice dump. Oh boy. G, get back on the grass. Come here. Jeez, what a mess. Come here. Turn around. Come on. Give me a sec. No. No, come here. Sit down. Ugh. All right, let me get inside. The things we do for love. Good morning. Dino had a dangler and needed help this morning. He ate what looked like one of my hairs and had a dangler. And I had to Good morning. Won't you poke me? Gangly dangle turd, yep. He had a dangler. What are you gonna do? Morning dino trauma. I know. It's like, what a way to start the day, man. What a way to work out the start to a whole day. Helping your dog pull a hair with a piece of turd on it out of his butt. Better than a cup of coffee, man, I'm telling you. That'll get you going. Ball so hard, motherfuckers wanna find me. Bum bum, bum bum, bum bum, bum bum bum. Ball so hard, motherfuckers wanna find me. But first they gotta find me. What's 50 grand to a motherfucker like me? Can you please define me? Remind me? What? My dog always eats grass and I'll have to pull it out sometimes. It's just part of being a dog. What's she order? Fish fillet? Good morning. I'm literally just using you guys as a way to get my brain to You know, like the old truck that won't start. That's how my brain feels. The old truck with the keys in it in a horror movie that you find sitting out on an old farm. And you're running from the scarecrow killer or whatever, you know? That's how my brain feels this morning. Like I put the key in there and went. What was in Paris? Some neighbors, dude. Neighbors in Paris. I like that song. Please, brain. Can you please work? Man, it's cold out here today. Weather's been so weird here. It's been like unseasonably warm for the last 3 days, and then like the last day and a half have been just like cold. Is today a work day? Yeah, man. Today is onion nuggets. I agree. Completely agree with that sentiment. I got a hard question for you, your morning brain. Who is buried in Grant's tomb? Man, who could it be now? I'm just gonna take a stab at it and say Ulysses S. Grant. But that's just a shot in the dark. It's just a wild guess. Minnesota. It's been ripping cold here in Minnesota. But today it's 50 degrees. It's like summer, eh? Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota is American Canada. You're right. You're right about that. You play an instrument? No, I don't. The Midwest is funny. Yes, it is. Been having trouble sleeping lately. I've been having like a bout of weird insomnia. And as such, I've been watching some old movies that I haven't seen in forever over the last few days. I watched Wayne's World 1 and 2. Finished 2 last night. Man, those movies were weird. It's so weird how deconstructed movies got in the 90s. It was like the artifice of movie making was tiresome to people. And so there were tons of these movies that were like breaking the fourth wall, involving the audience in the film in a way that, you know, pretty immersion breaking if you're going for that. And Wayne's World is all about that. Like both of them. Both of them are like, yeah, we're doing this weird kind of like stoner comedy. And that's another thing about Wayne's World is that like it feels like a stoner comedy, but nobody's stoned. It's like, but the naked Indian from the second one. Oh yeah. Wait a tick. In your dream, was it Jim Morrison? Yeah. And did he have a naked Indian with him? Yeah. And this is very important. Did you feel that it was a little inappropriate seeing the whole butt crack of the Indian? Yeah. I had the same dream. Stoner comedy where smoking weed is the joke doesn't hold up anymore. There are only a few movies that I would call stoner comedies that actually are like that. Like where like smoking weed is the central thing about it. It's usually about people that smoke weed that get into hijinks or whatever, you know. It's like Pineapple Express. Weed is the catalyst for these two stoners to get involved in a, you know, a weird crime or whatever. You know, Cheech and Chong, that one, the Up in Smoke is pretty much just about weed. Weed is the central thing in Up in Smoke. But like Biodome, that's another one. I watched that one recently too. Another like 90s stoner comedy, and that one is they I think they blaze up like once or maybe twice in that movie, but most of the movie is them just acting incredibly stoned. Well, doing the this is what people think you act like when you're stoned act. It was interesting. Those movies really don't hold up very well. Yeah, Harold and Kumar go to White Castle. Yeah. So that's another stoner comedy with not a lot of stone in it. That is true. They grew weed in the biodome. Are you guys aware the site has your entire Patreon library for free without downloads? Yes. Well, I don't know if we're aware of every site that does it, but we made a decision a long time ago that people are going to, there's like no way you can't have people take your content when they don't pay for it. It's like, you know, you can't put a movie out and have no download sites for it. So we don't concern ourselves with people stealing our content. We do our best to keep it from being so, but we have found throughout the entire existence of this show from the very beginning that our Patreon content has been compromised and given for free to people by people who are patrons. And we've found that people see the importance of supporting us, and we have plenty of people that choose to do that despite the fact that they could probably go out and find everything for free. So, you know, as much as I would love to sit here and wring my hands about it, like I'm sure you intended me to do by bringing it up, that's the honest truth. We don't care. Pop your whoop. I wouldn't advertise it around here, though. But other than that, what am I gonna stop you to do? How am I gonna stop you? And what would me sitting here wringing my hands and caring about it do for me? None. So enjoy. In a way, like, it's a flattering question almost. How do you feel about the fact that people like your shit so much that they go to lengths to steal it? Man, I wish people liked my shit less. I think the people that use that type of method are an interesting group, like the people that will go and find a playlist that includes all our unlisted videos or whatever the fuck, right? Because they're clearly fans. Like, they clearly want more and more and more. But I feel like they got a chip on their shoulder too. Like, a lot of the people that steal our content aren't just like, they're not satisfied with just stealing it. They've got to like brag about it or bring it up. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I got a chip on my shoulder. I obsessively watch your content for free. It's like, good. Yeah, there's interest around what I do with my business partners. People like watching our stuff. People, like I said, are willing to go out of their way to find it when they can't afford to buy it or don't want to buy it. Yeah, it's like, good for you, bro. Exactly. Tell me more. I'm a hacker, said no reputable hacker ever. No, that's not true, Jareth. What about crash override and acid burn, dude? Crash override, aka Zero Cool. Dude, do you know that Zero Cool crashed 118 .NET systems when he was only 10 years old? He's a legend, dude. So I remember pirating DP bonus episodes because I was 16. And see, like I said, you guys have to understand, on the business end of things, I was not involved in DP, but I do remember that, like, I learned a pretty big lesson being on DP when it comes to, like, if you're going to offer premium content at a, you know, at a price point, people are going to steal it. So you may as well just deal with that, you know, and not allow it to be a source of angst in your life. I hacked the Wi-Fi at the local bowling alley. The password was password. That's not a hack, dude. Do you understand that, like, guessing a password is not a hack? Guessing a password is what we call in the tech industry guessing a password. That's not a hack. A hack is circumventing the security on a system in order to gain access to data that you normally wouldn't. So if you hacked the Wi-Fi by guessing the password, then I don't know, man. I guess you hacked whether or not it's going to rain tomorrow. Password to get to the router config. Yeah, dude, messing around with the router configuration is not hacking either. That's a consumer interface. So you guessed a password. Nice day out, dude. It's cold. My hands are frozen icebergs, man. Put them up in my sleeves and then put them in my pockets. Yeah, you didn't hack anything. Just like, you know. Salty. Yeah, dude. I gotta change that password. Oh, it looks like it feels nice out there. I mean, it doesn't feel horrible, but it's cold. It's still pretty cold. What, guessing a password is not hacking, dude? No. Dude, a hacker sits down with a remote terminal machine and brute forces the botnet and exploits the backdoor security weakness to pass undetected through the firewall. Okay? Can we get this straight? They type super fast. Come on. Remember when Watch Dogs came out and Fox News said it was trying to teach kids to hack? Yeah, that's because like the people that watch Fox News are like 80 or have the mentality of an 80-year-old, so it's easy for them to like that's the type of person that I think thinks guessing someone's password is hacking them. No. Hack the planet, bro. Hackers are going to be the basis for the next crime syndicate, or the way they make most of their revenue. Hackers are already the basis of 2 of the largest crime syndicates in the world. Like, I don't know if they're like, I would say they're the basis, but they're key weapons in what I think are 2 or 3 of the biggest crime syndicates in the world. The United States, China, and the USSR. Back in the USSR. I guess it's not the USSR anymore. Putin's trying to make it the USSR again. Everybody's in a kerfuffle about that. What's your definition of hacking? That should straighten things out. Just kind of what I said earlier. Using exploits to, affect use of a system in a way that you shouldn't be able to. So using a security weakness, engaging in, denial of service attack in order to bring something down, and then blah, 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 blah. That sort of things. Like using, I don't know, using technology in order to subvert the security of other technology. There you go. How's that? So if you walk into the bowling alley and you guess that the password for the Wi-Fi is password, you didn't hack anybody, you just guessed a stupid password. If you use some sort of a program in order to spam their Wi-Fi password with login attempts and constantly, cycle through a list of common passwords, then you're hacking. Because you're not guessing the password, you're brute forcing the password. You're using a piece of technology in order to effectively do the same thing, but that's what makes it different. That's what makes hacking different than just blundering in, like, I don't know. That's at least the way I've always thought about it. Of course, I do think that like hacking can involve things that are not necessarily directly technologically involved. So maybe I'm wrong about this, because I do think that an important part of hacking is oftentimes social engineering. And in fact, social engineering is probably more important than the things that I was talking about in terms of traditional hacking, which is, you know, gaining, like having a physical person gain physical access to sensitive data that allows you to access the machine. It's not guessing a password. It's, once again, brute forcing a password or finessing a password. How about that new Lord of the Rings show? I haven't seen it. Is it horrible? We used to hang out with some hackers back in the 90s on Merc, and they would hack shit all the time. They would even shut down the local Subway restaurant, probably DDoS them. I mean, I can see what you're saying, Cynic. I think there's more nuance to it than maybe I was giving in my description, because, you know, I see what you're saying. Like, if you socially engineered the password, that would be a minor hack, right? If you went into the bowling alley and managed to tell the dude that you were from Comcast or whatever, and hey, I need your Wi-Fi password so I can take a look at something, and they give it to you, then, you know, you use that login information to steal from them or to cause damage to the company or whatever the fuck. You've done a hack, and an integral part of that hack had really nothing to do with a computer. And so I see what you're saying. I still don't think guessing a really stupid common password, like password or 12345 or whatever, I don't really call that a hack. But it's a fine line, right? Because if you use a really simple program, I'm trying to remember the name of the program. There's like a password guessing program. What's that? I keep thinking hashtag, but I know it's not hat. It was Hashcat. And that, you know, it'll brute force a password. I think that's the name of it. But anyway, that is different, right? I guess it's just because the common person wouldn't know what to guess as a common password. That is true. It does require a little bit of finesse, I guess, in social engineering to guess a common password, because you need to know what to try. But I still feel like it kind of like is really, if that is a hack, it's really on the bottom edge of what can be considered a hack. Is it stealing the car if the keys are in the ignition? Always, yeah, of course. Kali Linux gives you all the tools in one place. Yeah, I ain't no hacker, so you have to forgive me. Upper and lowercase letter and symbols. It's a fine line, but I'd say you're more correct overall. It's not really hacking. I don't know. Social engineering is an integral part of hacking. You're talking about a company that's been hacked. There's a good chance that there were like minor social engineering moves that were made unnoticed in order to lead to a lot of those hacks. Not all of them. There are some hacks that are entirely like remote or whatever. But, you know, a lot of times you have to facilitate those hacks with like an in-person kind of social engineering thing or a campaign of surveillance or whatever the fuck. And none of those things really rely on hacking technology. Gotta take training at work about social engineering every few months. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's interesting now that we live in a time where people are starting to become aware that it exists, because social engineering's like greatest tool to this day is ignorance. Like social engineering, if hacking is the exploitation of a weakness in a computer system, social engineering is the exploitation of a social weakness within the biological computer that is the human brain. So social engineering and is, they often go hand in hand, because they have similarly aligned functions. Hackers used to be really smart. Now you can hack with the help of software. I mean, to me, that is a sign that hackers are still smart. Because if you think that remaining in a position where in order to hack things you have to know 18 different coding languages and shit is incredibly inefficient. And so it was that very brilliance in that community that you're talking about that led to the birth of these tools that make it easier. But even so, with those tools, you have to have some baseline knowledge of the system that you're trying to get into. Yeah, true hackers, dude. Crash override, acid burn, the freak. Where are all these dudes' names in hackers? The freak. Yeah, what was Matthew Lillard's hacker name? Does anybody remember? I can't remember. So the main chick, Angelina Jolie, was acid burn. And then the main character guy was crash override / zero cool. The little gay kid, I think he was a little gay Puerto Rican kid, was freak. Oh yeah, he was no, the plague was the bad guy. Yeah. The plague was the bad guy's hacker name. He was the plague. Serial killer. Yeah, you're right. that's the one. Serial killer, dude. Oh god. Dude, that movie is fun. It is so like laughably cringy when it comes to how it dumbed down the whole idea of a computer, let alone hacking, so that it would be digestible to people who were really just like, if anything, on the cusp of maybe having their own computer or just getting their own computer, had very limited knowledge of how they worked, but were fascinated with the potential of the technology. And so this whole movie was written to exploit that cultural fascination with the ascendant nature of these technological devices, new as they were, And so Hollywood was pretty smart to stylize it. But that movie is pretty cringy, dude. Inline roller rollerblades were huge at the time. Yeah, yeah. Blades were a big deal. Blades, bro. If you want a good show that uses real tools and real commands, scripts, and exploits, watch Mr. Robot. I don't really care, but thanks. I hate the fact that they dumbed hacking down. I love it. It's fantastic, dude. Because if you, like, I'm not even claiming to be some kind of supercomputer wizard or something, but if you have some kind of like a rudimentary knowledge of how computers work, watching hackers is one of the most hilarious fucking things ever. Everything is so stylized, right? If they just showed acid burn sitting there for hours typing SQL exploits and shit, it would have been so boring. But when they sit down to hack, it's like they go into the cyber world, dude. Like if they showed like real hackers, hackers would be like the most boring movie ever, because it would be a bunch of sweaty ass Russian dudes sitting in a little shitbox apartment in Moscow, hunched over their laptops with just like an ashtray filled with cigarette butts in front of each of them, and like a whole ass mini fridge filled with like whatever the Russian equivalent of Red Bull is, you know what I mean? Or Indians, yeah. Or just, you know, Americans. Or Chinese guys, you know what I mean? It's like literally just a bunch of really pale, sweaty, sleep-deprived, caffeine-overloaded dudes hunched over computers day, night, left, right. That really wouldn't be all that fun, you know? Remember in Weird Science when they hack? Shit was like a video game. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, really, like in the 80s, those movies started. Tron was like that. Tron was like almost the ultimate expression of cultural fascination with the, you know, onset of the computer. The era of the computer had begun. The era of the video arcade and the computer and these kind of novel technologies. And Tron leapt right to the fantasism with it and envisioned basically what is now becoming a reality. But in the 1980s, it took a world that was mostly, you know, 8-bit video games in terms of graphical interface, and envisioned a future where you would be inside the video game. And look at what's happened. I watched War Games recently as well. War Games, in fact, all these movies are free on YouTube if you've got like YouTube, whatever it is, premium or whatever. I watched War Games as well. And that's another movie that, you know, like really stripped down the kind of like sexiness of the hack. Like they didn't, to them, it was more just novelty, right? It wasn't, they weren't really going for that, like, this is like a really kind of like I said, like a sexy use of a technology that nobody in the audience understands. Andrew Lightman, played by Matthew Broderick in that film, is portrayed, I think, way closer to an actual hacker. And in fact, a lot of the gear that he uses in that movie was absolutely cutting edge stuff that you would need in order to run exploits back in the day. He had a, you know, that phone cradle interface. He had a bank of multiple floppy drives. I think they were Ingsci floppies, which were not the 5 1/4, but the big bad boys. So like way before my time on that way, but so they actually showed off some actual current bleeding edge technology. Yeah, whoops, I committed espionage starting Matthew Broderick. Not even really espionage. Like it goes so far beyond that. It's like Whoops, I accidentally committed a cyber crime and started World War III. What do? You know, like, what? But it's a great movie. I really like the movie. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it shows a lot of foresight in people all the way back in the 80s. My dad had inside drives at his work, and that's the only time I ever saw one. He hated them because they were just so slow and so prone to mechanical failure and blah 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 blah. But yeah, those old inside floppy drives, you had to lock the fucking front door on. They're in war games. I got like a nostalgia slap when I saw them again. I was like, oh. But I never saw one of those phone cradle interfaces. That's pretty. That's dude. That's some stuff. He takes the the old school corded phone off the hook, sets it in the phone cradle. Pretty neat. The acoustic modem. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ali Sheedy from War Games, dude. Yeah. She was a lot of people's crush in the 80s. She was a crush girl in the 80s. She also played the misfit in Breakfast Club, if you remember, and Johnny Five's girlfriend in Short Circuit. Oh, day. Sit out here for a minute, find a sunny spot. Get your little butt in the sun if you're going to do that, because it's cold. Ali Sheedy fell off hard after the 80s. Pretty much everybody in those movies, think about it. Molly Ringwald. She was at one point probably the biggest actress in America, like the most recognizable actress in America. Poof. What's his name? Judd Nelson. Huge actor back then. Where'd he go? I don't know. Fucking Emilio Estevez. He's still alive, but who's heard of Emilio Estevez since, the 80s or very early 90s? Yeah, he had Men at Work and the Mighty Ducks in the 90s. And then just... He was just in the Mighty Ducks show. I mean, that's like... kind of proves the point. Like, I find it hilarious that there's a Mighty Ducks show, and I find it even more hilarious that I've never heard about it. So that kind of proves the point, yeah. Judd Nelson, these two TV movies back in the 2000 for USA, Cabin by the Lake 1 and 2. Are they good? They sound familiar. Maybe I've seen them, but hilariously bad but funny movies. Okay, gotcha. What was the nerdy kid's name too? He was I keep wanting to saying I keep wanting to say Judge Reinhold, and that's not it. It's a different dude. Who was that kid's the dorky kid in Breakfast Club? What was his name? Anthony Michael Hall. Thank you. All right, yeah. And he actually, I think, out of everybody, has had the most successful ongoing career. He's still in shit. Dude, that sounds so familiar to me. The whole like his MO being like he kidnaps people and drowns them in the lake. That sounds so familiar to me. But yeah, Anthony Michael Hall is still on a lot of stuff, and he looks so weird now too. Like as a grown up, it's so weird seeing him because you're like, holy fuck, that's Anthony Michael Hall, and then you're like, but grown up. Ugh. He was supposed to remain like a nerdy late teenager slash late blooming early 20s guy forever. How dare he grow up? But there were a lot of like 90s stars and starlets that went the same route, dude. My golden era of childhood. Trying to think of some of them, like what was her name? Katie Holmes. Katie Holmes was like a huge star in the 90s. God, what was her name? Nev Campbell. She was in Scream. She was in Disturbing Behavior. Oh God, who was she in Disturbing Behavior with? I don't know. Then there was basically like all the girls in The Craft. You guys remember that movie? That movie was like a 90s young actress supergroup movie. Dude, that movie is kind of badass. Dude, can I just digress for a second and let you know that like this movie, which I like kind of made fun of back when I was a kid, is actually pretty goddamn cool. Denise Richards. Yeah, you're right. Phoebe Gates. Fucking Renee Zellweger, dude. These people just like Devon Sawa. You remember that kid from Final Destination and some other stuff? Those 90s chicks were the best, dude. I know. Who was the girlfriend in Mallrats? What was her name? Madchen Amick. I think I'm right about that. Her name was Madchen Amick. Am I wrong about that? Somebody double check me. I'm pretty sure that's true. Dude, I had the biggest crush on her. That aesthetic needs to come back around. Yeah, dude, like the pixie cut with the nose ring slash and or offset lip ring and the kind of goth makeup. Yeah, Dad. Yeah. Yeah. That 90s aesthetic, though. Especially with the ladies, dude. Dudes in the 90s? Dude, I really like abide by that line in Clueless, which brings up like another batch of 90s, hot chicks. But in Clueless, you remember like she's talking about how she doesn't date high school boys, and she's like, just look at them. and it shows a slightly exaggerated representation of what dudes between the age of 13 and 25 were dressing like in the 90s. Just like big saggy McBaggy pants, like all fall, like there it really wasn't like it was comfortable, and I think the aesthetic was kind of cool, but it definitely wasn't a flattering aesthetic, you know. Dudes in the 90s looked way goofier than chicks in the 90s did. It's weird. So many of my young clients come in now dressed the way my mom did in the 90s, kind of creepy pastel windbreakers and high-rise mom jeans and baggy sweaters. Yeah, dude. But it just goes to show you, man, you live long enough like we have. You know, I'm not saying we're ancient, but we've got enough years on us now to where we've seen a cycle. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? We've seen a cycle. Like we've existed within the boundaries of an entire cycle, and it has looped all the way back around to where we were now, which means that it's going to just keep, the clock's going to keep going, right? And that kind of makes me sad, because if we're in the early 90s right now, that's great, but that means that the 2000s are coming. No, no, man, not that aesthetic again, please. Well, I would say, from a, I guess, pseudo-spiritual standpoint, cynic, that it's all one cycle. That it's very clear that the cycle of death and rebirth is existent, not just in ways that we can see it, with an animal being born out of an egg, and then going on and living its life, and then dying, and then being eaten by worms, which, you know, grow fat and happy on it, and then another bird comes down to swoop up that worm and feed it to a baby chick of the same species. You know, and that's a very direct and observable example of what we're talking about, a cycle. But I really like to liken it to the Wheel of Samsara in the Buddhist tradition. This idea, now, you know, they take it maybe a little more literally than I do, but this idea of the cyclical nature of life, from birth to death, to birth to death, to birth to death, and how it all feeds it. Like, if you extrapolate that outside of your human experience, you see it in nature, you see it in cosmology. It almost seems like this cycle of entropy and rebirth is the real fundamental pulsating truth at the heart of the universe, if that's what you want to find. It really feels like the closest thing to it to me is this idea of explosive expansion and slow but inexorable decay. And I think it's very likely that that just perpetuates forever. I think it's very likely that that is inherently the nature of existence. I think humanity would break out of that pattern if we achieved functional bodily immortality. Break out of it. I mean, we would break out of it, but we would not, the world would not break out of it. That's the thing. It's kind of a philosophical concept that's explored in a microcosmic way in Aliens. If you'll remember, that movie begins with Ripley floating in an cryogenic escape pod, and she's been up there for something like 50 years or some shit. I can't remember exactly how long, but she's been up there a long time, and she has remained entirely functionally the same age, but the entire world has moved on without her. And so while the cycle of entropy and decay was halted momentarily for her, it's a really stark example of how it's not halted for nature or people or the systems of government that those people, you know, build up and tear down. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, there's a reason that there's so much poetry, songwriting, and visual imagery around the idea, and just like language idioms, like what goes around comes around. That little aphorism or whatever that you hear is probably used in every corner of this planet by every human being in some way. I think that human beings have always fundamentally understood this cycle. And if you want to get real weird with me, I think that it is the way that capitalism and these ever more arcane systems of government layer complexity in our lives that have shaken humanity out of the cycle that it was intended to live within. And that is at the root of a lot of mental illness and a lot of societal ills in general. And I genuinely believe that. I have always believed that you cannot take an animal that was completely and utterly evolved for a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle and plop it in a cubicle for 70 hours a week and not expect it to pull its fucking hair out, or worse. And I think that when we look at what's called in the media and referred to just colloquially as the mental health crisis, the root of the mental health crisis is that human beings have strayed so far from their evolutionary purpose. Not evolutionary purpose, their evolutionary adaptation. Think about it, and you can observe this in nature, right? If you take a dog that's big, working dog, a dog that's been bred like a border collie or something, that's been bred to herd animals, and you don't give it anywhere to go, what do? They go insane, right? People get these boutique animals because they look pretty, and then they live in a tiny place with them, never exercise them, and then wonder why the dog is fucking completely, absolutely out of its mind. Well, it's because you took an animal that was evolved, that had evolved, and then was even further selectively bred to have even stronger instincts to roam a piece of land, to work, and you're confining them into a tiny little human house. Well, I think everybody understands that psychological principle, but has a hard time applying it to themselves. The same thing has been done to us. Humanity has been domesticated in a way that means that sometimes we end up with an owner that takes good care of us. And if we end up with an owner that takes good care of us, we can have a relatively fulfilling life doing the human things that we enjoy. But if we have a mean owner, or even worse, no owner at all, well, our life is pretty fucking hardscrabble. Don't you see the parallels? Don't you see the cycle? Because have you ever worked with a homeless dog? Have you ever worked with a street dog? I have. They don't trust a fucking thing. They lived an existence that was just subsistence. And that means they had to be ready to fight every second, because that morsel of food might be the only morsel they get for 3 fucking days. And so they got to be willing to kill for that morsel. and they don't give a fuck. And then you work with the dog, and you establish trust, and suddenly you have a dog that isn't that way anymore, right? You can take everything I just said and replace dogs with people, and nothing changes. The ghetto bird. Everybody look, it's the ghetto bird. Well, you're having the whole nature versus nurture false dichotomy, and it can be very confusing when you look at it like a false dichotomy. But in fact, the reason that dogs have so many different expressions of breed and so many different temperaments between breed is a result of both nature and nurture. And the same thing is true of human beings. Human beings have an inherent nature, and human beings can be nurtured into certain paths in life. Those things are not mutually exclusive. And so a lot of people struggle with this. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it how people are raised? Or is it the fact that people were born? It's both. It's both. Both. Yeah, in this case, nurture would be selective breeding, right? The way that they were raised. All right, you believe that we're the sum of our baseline attributes and our experiences. Right. I don't necessarily disagree with that, so long as you understand that you also had no control over any of that, right? That's something that's very hard for people to let go of. It comes up here, constantly, objectivism versus determinism. Whether you believe we live in an objectivist universe or a deterministic universe. If you believe that we live objectively, then every choice that you make is your own, exists in a vacuum, basically, and is your own, like, little choose your own adventure book, where the sum total of that many different choices over a life is where people get the idea that, quote unquote, you can be anything, or anything is possible, right? And then if you believe you live in a deterministic universe, then you know that the fact that you're sitting where you are now making the decision that you're making is the result of an unbroken causal chain that goes back to the first fucking protozoa that you had absolutely no influence over at all. And so the list of choices that you had in your life, as much as they felt like objective choices, were entirely deterministic choices. It's a hard thing for people to let go of because they think it means that they're not free. And they think that it means that they're not free to change themselves or to make choices. But it is the fundamental truth of the universe. And so you can accept it or not. I choose to accept. Most people don't realize how many possibilities they have to live a better life until it's too late to make the right decisions / put the work in. Yeah, that's very chicken soup for the fucking soul shit. I don't know what to say about that. You can't see your puppet strings, but they're there, of course. I mean, not really. It's not a puppet strings thing. I mean, I guess the puppeteer would just be time. But even then, it's hard to make an argument for that. It's not really a puppeteer relationship. It's more of what I like to call the state of nature. Derek Jensen will call it oftentimes the state of nature. And it's referenced that way in Ishmael. We are an animal that through millions of years of evolution has developed an incredibly complex psychology. But we are functionally no different from any other animal. Just as a bird is a slave to an entirely causal chain of events that it has no control over. It has no control over its great-great-grandfather's breeding patterns. It's just here because of them. And the decisions that it makes to peck at the grass, this little sparrow here that's pecking at the grass, the decision that he or she made to come to this lawn was based entirely on where this sparrow's mother gave birth to it, what little troop of sparrows he became a part of. Now there are 5 or 6 of them on my lawn. All of them little bundles of determinism. But we as human beings like to think of ourselves as ascended beyond that. And that causes a lot of psychological distress because people want things they can't have. As much as a little bird, if it had the psychological complexity that we did, would want to be a bird that could live in the ocean. If one of these little sparrows was thrown into the ocean, it would die. It would be preyed upon almost immediately. It's not equipped for that. But see, a sparrow doesn't have that desire. A sparrow doesn't desire to dive into the ocean. A sparrow doesn't have the desire to push its own limits. A sparrow has the desire to eat and breed and maintain the cycle, the state of nature, to pass its genes along, and to do what it has to do, whatever that is per animal, to maintain those genes and to maintain the safety of those genes, to maintain their own body and their own well-being, to eat when they need to eat, to sleep when they need to sleep, to fly away when they feel threatened, to perch when they need to rest, to socialize when they need to socialize. All of those things happen on autopilot for these little guys. It's really complicated. Certain genes are activated. There are genes that are even activated by light. If it's dark, the gene stays dormant. Right. Well, that's how you end up with these kind of extremophile animals that have they have eyes, but their eyes are long ago gone blind because they're now vestigial because the animal lives in total darkness, like these cave geckos and shit that they find that have an entire life cycle that, you know, maybe geckos is a bad, but like, you know what I'm talking about, these cave frogs and cave lizards and shit that are entirely blind cave fish or deep sea fish. That have just functionally gone entirely blind. Solipsism. How are you invoking solipsism? Solipsism, as I understand it, is believing that you are the center of the universe and that it all exists for you. So are you saying that the state of nature is inherently solipsistic. Doesn't matter who we are. What matters is our plan. Cave fish. I guess so. Oof, oof. Nobody's here. Nobody's here. So you don't need to get all worked up. Mom's at work. It's you, me, and Cricket. Anybody that comes to the door can just ring the ding dong until their finger bleeds, because they ain't getting an answer. We don't answer the door, huh? Unless we're expecting somebody. Huh? Humans are slaves to our limbic system. This is true of most animals. Our choices are whatever. The development of complex language by far is the most significant and deadly adaptation that human beings ever made. Like, once we stopped grunting at each other and conveying basic information with vocalization and started singing to one another, we became a different type of animal. Like, those intervening years, much like when I say those intervening years, I mean that, you know, what to us is an ocean of time between our more primitive ancestors before they had a codified language, and if you could go halfway through that transition as they were just, you know, learning the power of information conveying and listen to the first real language that was ever spoken. And I'm talking about pre-human ancestors here, because there is no way that Homo sapiens sapiens was the first of our genetic heritage to speak. We were just the first of our genetic heritage to write it down. And not even the first to make our artistic expression. You know, our very, very close genetic cousins, now extinct, the Neanderthal, they were not known for huge, expansive, expressive artistic displays and cave paintings necessarily, but some tribes of them left a profound amount of that type of stuff. Religious artifacts, or what we assume are religious artifacts, or, you know, maybe badges of office, and these kind of little fetishes, and animal skulls that were cleaned and kept. The French cave, yeah, the cave of forgotten dreams. There's a Werner Herzog documentary called Cave of Forgotten Dreams that will blow your fucking mind. I can't recommend you watch it enough. I think you might even be able to get it on YouTube. I don't know. But if you can't, you know, get it how you get it. But yeah, you know, basically stumbled on, you know, like a couple of hikers or whatever stumbled on this cave that had recently, you know, opened up after being sealed for generations, like since the beginning of the Ice Age. And you know, had been sealed up in a landslide or something, and then another landslide unsealed part of it, and they found this giant cave complex that is filled with some of the most moving and stunning art that you've ever seen in your entire life. absolutely, if you have any appreciation for art or any appreciation for just the absolute crazy amount of similarity that there is between us and people that are so distant from us, we wouldn't even know what to do if we were dropped into their world. Cave people, right? Neanderthal people, or, you know, Homo sapien people living with Neanderthal people. You know, the Neanderthals were not warred out of existence or starved out of existence. They were bred out of existence. They became part of us. So there were long periods of times where we probably lived among them and with them. And during those times, not a lot of the art that was made survived, but that cave, I can't remember the name of the cave, proves that it existed long before anybody ever thought it could. We're talking about art that has a clear understanding of both representation and aesthetic. You know what I mean? Do you think we are word their women, and vice versa? Like, you know what I mean? Why is it got to be one way or the other? There's this line in, I think it's Freddy Krueger 4, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, maybe it's 3, where Freddy is described as the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs. And if you really think about human beings and you go back all the way, we're all the bastard sons of a million maniacs, dude. I'm sure rape was common back before established rules. Rape is common now. You know, like some absurd amount of women, I think it's like 75% of women are sexually assaulted at some point in their life. So yeah, no, it's been around. It's still around. It never stopped. We're all the sons of brutal dictators, warlords, like the most violent tribal witch doctors that ever led an army. I mean, going back and just extrapolating out early human history and the history of our distant cousins and our close cousins, it's brutality upon brutality upon brutality upon brutality upon brutality. Are there times of wonderful cooperation within certain tribal groups? Absolutely. That led us to where we are today. But the brutality never left us. We like to think of ourselves as more civilized than the people that lived back there. And then, whoa, look at what we're doing so much better. Why would we ever want to even consider the fact that mankind's problems are caused by the fact that it is existing or trying to exist outside the state of nature? But the proof is in the goddamn pudding. We've ruined everything. We've ruined the world. And we all know it, too. So, how do we account for that? Our selfish desire for plastic bottles that have sugary soda in them. Or, you know, if you're lucky, they got sugary soda in them. Now they actually just have corn syrup in them. For your endless desire for cigarettes, coffee. You think that's a justification for literally the planet is ruined? ditched the cola but replaced it with booze. That's probably not a good thing. So this false spring that we're having is wreaking havoc on my sinuses. I need to suck it up and like get on some kind of like routine allergy medication or whatever, but I just hate the way they make me feel, man. I hate the upper effect that you get with a lot of those allergy medications, and the only one that like helps a little bit with me is Benadryl, but it has the opposite effect. It like makes me feel all dopey. And so part of me wants to take a Benadryl before the show today, and part of me wants to be like, no. Because I don't want to be all, you know, yawny and dopey and sad and tired today. Alcohol is worse than nicotine, pound for pound. One of our hundreds of employees trash everything every single day. You wonder where it's all going to end up. Oh yeah, well, you don't really have to wonder if you want to see. Have you ever been to a dump? One of the most craziest, most dystopian things that you'll ever exist is going to a big landfill, as they call them. When I was a kid, I've been in years, man, but when I was a kid, it was pretty routine for, you know, there to be junk. My dad was a mechanic, and so he had tons of like old cars. Like he, not old cars, but like he would buy like just like a piece of an old car that he needed to put on something else, and then he'd get all this junk and stuff. And like he did a lot of carpentry and shit too, and so he would build things, and he'd have this leftover stuff, and we'd end up with these bags of leaves and all kinds of crap, you know, like old mattress or whatever. It wasn't every day that we went out there, but like a few times in my life I was taken out to this dump called Fairmead right outside of Madera, California. It's actually a town, but the dump is in Fairmead. And I'm telling you, it's like Mad Max. I'm not even joking. You pull up to this place, and if you've got the windows down, as you know, you often do in California, you're immediately assaulted with the smell of mixed garbage. And it's a very distinct smell. If you've smelled it, you've smelled it, and if you haven't, you haven't. You know, there's bad smells to everything, right? Well, not everything, but, you know, like rotten food has a smell. Dirty, old, musty chairs that are all mold has a smell. You know, grease has a bad smell. Human waste has a bad smell. Animal waste has a bad smell. These smells are all pretty distinct from one another. It's kind of, you can smell the difference between them. And so everybody's familiar with every smell that's represented at a landfill, but they're not familiar with the fact that it is all mixed in pretty co-equal parts and creates its own distinct milieu of disgusting stench. You pull up to this place and you wait in line, and usually, like the way that they operate for people like us that just want to dump like a truckload of crap that we don't want anymore, is they charge you by the pound or whatever. So they have you go on a scale. They look at the make and model of your car. They put that into the little computer. They have you drive on a scale real quick. They weigh your truck to see how much crap is in it. And then you pay a certain amount and you go on into the dump. And then it's your job to find a place in the dump to just like offload the crap. And when you get in there, bro, It's Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, but even worse. It's literally the saddest thing you'll ever fucking see. It's all the way to the horizon. It's garbage. It's garbage as far as the eye can see. Literal mountains and sand dunes of garbage. It's like the ultimate perversion of nature. It has its own ecosystem. There are animals feeding on it. There are people picking through it. You know, there are people that pay to get into the dump, not to dump things, but to like drive around it and look for crap that people have thrown away. There are people picking through it. There's like steam coming out of it, and all overshadowed by this horrible stench that can only be described as the smell of humanity. The smell of our industry, the smell of our offal, the smell of the outcroppings of our bodies and our brains and our fucking time is all just mixed. There are these huge tractors pushing mounds of this crap around and creating pits in it so that it can be, you know, more tightly compacted into the ground. And all of it, and I can't understate this, draped in this absolute stench. The smell of human. The distilled smell of all of our funk and all of our BO and all of the crap we eat and poop out and all of the packaging we throw away with all the juices in it and all the rags that we do things with and throw in the garbage can and all the things we just put in the can and put on the curb and don't think about, that's where it goes. And if you've never been to one and you want to care a little more about the world, I can't recommend it highly enough because, like I said, I didn't get to go all the time, but I probably went like 10 times to Fairmead when I was a kid, you know, over the course of my life. And man, I hold on to those memories, the little ones that I have, because man, once you have smelled that smell, you can't unsmell it. If I smelled it immediately, I would know what it was. Hold on, let's see if I can fucking do something for myself here. That'll work. By the way, I love that the dump has a name like Fairmead, you know? It's not called like Gehenna or like the Gates of Tartaros or whatever the fuck. It's called Fairmead. Going out to Fairmead. You just heard like locals talking about it. You'd think like, man, I gotta find out where this Fairmead is at. Everybody's always going. Sounds wonderful. It's called Fairmead, bro. Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's like a nightmare. It's like, it's the cost, really. That's why it's a nightmare. Because what you're looking at, and it was just immediately apparent to me what it was as a kid. Maybe it didn't have the weight that it does now, but those memories have really fed this idea of everything around me, man. Everything, every bit of it, no matter where I'm living, no matter what I am, no matter what I'm doing, has such a cost. And if you want to see the tally, go to Fairmead. That's the tally. And think about it, that's just your local area's tally or one local area's tally. Go to your local dump and see what your region produces on a daily basis. All the restaurant waste, all the crap, it goes there. It looks like Mordor, but like instead of like craggy rocks, it's like sharp bits of old tin cans and shit, as far as the eye can see. Like diapers with syringes coming out of them and stuff. It's like Mordor if the ground was made of the most disgusting waste you can think of. And like you weren't impeded by boulders, you were impeded by like old couches that were half burned, or big mattresses that have big sussy blood stains on them and shit, or big like rusty chains with hooks on them, or like old saws sticking up out of the ground that are broken and bent. You know what I mean? I'm not even joking, bro. That's the dump. How's the ground going to be made of, Ben Shapiro? I don't know, man. Civilization is just a big dump? No. Civilization, by and large, and well, I will tell you this, there are some places where that is absolutely true, because they don't have municipal services, so they actually turn into a dump. Dude, have you ever seen the Vice documentary, The Cannibal Warlords of Liberia? This is back in the day when Vice was actually kind of like edgy and good, because they were citizen journalists trying to make crazy, you know, talk about things and do stories about shit that nobody ever covered. They went to Freedom Town in Liberia, in Africa, in West Africa, right? And they went to this area of Freedom Town that was called Baboon Town. And it was a beach area covered in shacks. And when you look at the beach is literally like, if you ever, like my yard right now has a couple of dinosaur poops in it that I need to pick it up. If it was like 10 times more dinosaur poop and my grass was beach, that's what it was. People had no recourse other than to just crap on the beach or crap in the water, and then it, you know, it just washes up on the beach. There was no plumbing, there was no garbage service, so there were just mounds of garbage laying around in the town, kids playing in it, literal functional anarchy. There's a sex trade going on. There's a drug trade going on. There are literal little kids running around on heroin, like just smoked out of their fucking minds on heroin. It's like it's everything that you could fucking imagine. And there are whole families of people that's their day to day. If you live in Baboon Town, that's your day to day. You happen to be a Liberian, that's your day to day. There are other people who you remember the dumps I was talking about? They live in them. There are places on this planet where the dumps are the last place that a person can go to try and eke out a living. And so they move into the dump. And they use stuff from the dump to build a shack or a shelter in the dump. And every day they get up and they go out into the dump and they try and find things in the dump that they can take apart and sell, or fix up and sell, or you know, recycle for a few pennies on the pound or whatever. And that's how they put bread in their mouths every day. So their whole cycle of existence exists living in the dump. That place that I just described, with the smell that never stops. How can you stand the stench? This is gonna be hard to describe, but I'm gonna do my best. The smell is kind of sweet. It's not a pleasing sweet, but it's a stench for sure, but you get used to it, yeah. Like if you're there for a couple of hours offloading a big trailer of crap, which I've done multiple times, by the time you leave, you kind of forget that the stench is there. But when you leave and go home and it's not there, you smell it on your clothes and in your hair and on your hands. It saturates you. Check 1, 2. Hello, origin of language. Is that you, sir? So the smell is not like this overpowering assault on your senses that you think it is. It is just a combination of every bad thing that you've ever smelled in such quantities that it creates like an ecosystem. And overall, it does, like, because there's so much decay, and decay has a sickly sweet smell. That's what it is. It's such a haunting smell, though, knowing that it makes it smell worse to me. I'm kind of a wimp. But yeah, but it's that, dude. It's the food that's all sharp and vinegary and really rotten, but it's mixed in with like old dry coffee and let's just everything you can think of, anything that you would just throw in the garbage can, like coffee that's gone stale, whatever you throw away, that's where it ends up. So every smell, all of it, mixed, mashed. Visit your local dump and you'll smell it. Yeah, I mean, I'm dead serious, dude. You have one. If you live anywhere near a town, there's a dump, and it absolutely operates the way that you think it does. So if you've got like maybe a bag of old crap you want to throw away one day, just do it as an experience. Just get all the old crap that you ain't gonna use anymore, just laying around the house, broken stuff that's too big to put in the trash can or whatever. Put it in the back of your truck, or just make a duffel bag of old crap that isn't worth anything, old, stuff with holes in it that's not worth donating or anything, and run it out to that dump. Pay the $10 or whatever it takes to drive out there and park and find a place to throw your stuff and wander around a little bit, because your $10 lets you pick through it if you want. Stay for a minute, stay for 10-15 minutes and become saturated in that smell and experience how it goes from this immediate assault on your senses to just kind of like how the world smells. You're just kind of like, oh yeah. It's not until you leave that you realize, like, oh my God. You live on an animal farm or close enough to one to smell, just becomes part of the background. Yeah. Well, I grew up in an agricultural area where they raised a lot of pigs, now a lot of cattle, I guess, in more recent times. But back when I was younger, it was a lot of pigs and horses, goats, sheep. And yeah, those types of large farming operations have a smell that kind of permeates the whole area, man. It's not just localized to that farming operation. It drifts on the wind, and it just kind of becomes part of your background radiation, especially if you live out in the country and within 3 or 4 or 5 miles of one of those places, And it's like that. But, that is one smell. That's, pig poop or chicken poop or whatever it is, right? There's one smell, or maybe a group of 5 or 6 smells. We're talking about the ultimate bad smell blend is the dump, dude. I wonder if there's any TikTokers, any of these like clean cut kids that are like, dude, we go to the ultimate bad smell place. Today, we're taking a trip to the dump. That's right. The dump. Most of you probably don't even know it exists, but it's where all your trash goes. And we're going to go there, and we're going to drive our Rolls Royce in there, and and throw away this bag of old fish bones. And you know, like, most of it would be too, like, it would start off as being like funny, and then they'd be like, man, this is actually kind of sad. Really makes me think about like the damage and stuff that humans do to the earth. And maybe like I need to make some changes. Maybe we all do. Anyway, if you like this video, like and subscribe. Come back for more. Next week, I'll be blowing the trumpet up somebody's ass with a bowl of oatmeal in it. Can I get the oatmeal up? Who knows? It's fucking crazy. Click here for this and click here for that. You know, whatever, bro. Should be Paul's default voice. I should just talk like the California douchebag, bro. Right, man. Hey, what's up, bro? Hey, how's it going, man? Hey, dude, if I ever decide to say fuck this and like change my name and disappear and move to some beach bum town, I'm definitely gonna talk like this, man. What's your story, dude? Oh, man, I was a surfer for a long time. Bucked my knee on a wicked crester. You know, so I haven't been able to do that, but I just can't be away from the ocean, you know, so I kind of do what I can here, live on disability, and like, you know, everything to be near the old ocean. You know, I go every morning. I spend every night out there until I have to go to sleep. You know, I was a guy that like, I used to watch a lot of TV and stuff, man. And like now my TV is this, bro. No one would believe you're a surfer, Paul. Dude, if I told him I was an old, dude, I'm fucking old. I'm 42, and so you're telling me I could not pass off the lie that like, dude, yeah, I was a surfer. I was a surfer for 25 years, and then I took an injury. I took a bad fall, hit my neck, I got a real bad spinal injury, and then it's just all been kind of downhill from there, man. I know I really let myself go. It's hard to understand, but here's a picture of me, bro. I just find a picture of like, you know, a grainy picture of some old dude in the 80s surfing or whatever the fuck. Like, yeah, man, I surfed forever. I could pull that shit off easy peasy, lemon squeezy. I spent most of my time in Leo, Korea, man. So, like, the waves are like, you have to wait for them more than anywhere else, but they got the best, most consistent waves there. You know what I mean? So Leo Korea was like, that's my secret surf spot or whatever. It was maybe not the best, but it's the one I like for like practicing, you know what I mean? See, I'm old enough so where I could pull off that I'm a retired this or that, dude. Dude, if I wanted to be a real scumbag, I'm hella old enough to be like, I served in a Operation Desert Storm. No, I couldn't say that. I'm a little too young for that. I'd have to say, what was the Afghan Operation Enduring Freedom? I did my first tour in Operation Enduring Freedom. I was 21 years old when 9/11 happened, and you know, my life was in a place where I just didn't feel like I was doing much. I was working at a coffee shop, you know, and I decided, like a lot of people did, that I had to do something, and so I joined up, and I ended up in the 422nd Platoon, Air National Guard, and we were stationed in Kandahar, just outside of Kandahar, in a little town called Bushdell, and you know, I did 2 tours there in Afghanistan. I saw a lot of my good friends, you know, lay down their lives for that freedom, and I was wounded very badly. I've been on disability ever since. I'm trying to eke out a living here, you know. Now, could you fact check me? Sure, but most people aren't going to. That's like, it kind of comes back around to what we were talking about earlier, the social engineering stuff. Well, it's interesting. You know, I had a lot of friends that got hit by an IED, but for me, it was actually a mishandled gas canister. So we had these M35 gas rocket grenades, and a soldier had left one sitting out in the baking hot sun and loaded it up into my grenade, and it backfired on me and blew a hole in my side here and did a lot of damage to this left arm. And so you know, I was immediately wounded by that. It's you know, something that happens. You know, you don't expect to be wounded by your own weapons, but you know, it happens more often than you'd think. You know. How do you know? It almost feels disrespectful to do it, but I'm just showing you how easily a person can spin a line of bullshit on you. Tell me something else. Tell me something else that a 42-year-old dude could be like, kind of like a dude that did something for 20 years, and I'll be it. I'll sell it in a way that would sell in most social situations, just to give you an idea of how you can't trust anything that anybody ever says. A biker gang? Oh yeah, man, I used to ride. I was patched and everything, yeah. I used to ride with these guys called the Iron Crusaders out of Austin, Texas. I grew up down in Austin, and kind of fell in with the gang through my teenage years. I had a friend that had a dad that was in the Crusaders. He was a patched guy, 1%er, real fucking hard ass. And he had the coolest Harley that I'd ever seen. You know, it was a big, giant dual block 350, big ape hangers on it. You know, it's the tiniest little helmet he could get away with. And you know, as soon as I saw that, my life was. I knew that that's what I wanted to be, and you know, I was positioned in a unique place that I had a person that I knew that was high up in the organization, that going to trust me through my friendship with his son. And it you know, allowed me to be given the opportunity to prove myself in that environment. And I did. I did my dues. That's all we'll talk about when it comes to that. But I rode with the Crusaders for 25 years, and if push comes to shove, I still will. I took a spill in 2015. We were riding. Just doing, of all things, not even a hard ride, a very casual ride across the high desert above Tehachapi in California. And just a wicked slick spot in the road. Bike went wobbly underneath me, and I went down pretty hard. Lost a lot of mobility in my left and right arm, and took a spinal injury. And now, unfortunately, it's hard for me to even ride on motorcycle for very long. And so, but you know, how would you know? How would you know I didn't do it? I mean, if you went and looked into some of the little bullshit that I made up about the 350C, I don't know if there's a 350 Harley or whatever, but you're not going to do that. A retired logger? Okay. Actually, I spent a lot of time in the Yukon. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of paper that's made that isn't taken straight, you know, from one of these other countries in South America is taken from the Yukon. There's a lot of logging contracts up there. When I was a young man, kind of aimless, you know, as a lot of young men are. And I had this uncle who would do seasonal logging work in Alaska, and he always talked about how beautiful Alaska was. And, you know, I knew through him that there was such a thing as seasonal work up there. And so I decided to look into it. And he helped me out a little bit, told me where to go, told me who to talk to, and sure as shit, there it was. And I didn't know first thing about cutting down a tree. I'd never done it. And, you know, a lot of people walk through those doors, walk right back out 2-3 weeks later. Can't do it. You know, I don't really think ill of the people that can't do it necessarily. It takes a certain type of person. because it is one of the most dangerous jobs in America. I worked a flume, which many guys fall into and end up crushed. I was lucky when I fell into mine. I ended up crushed, but not crushed, killed. You know, but I did 25 years at the Denali plant there, and we worked the flume. My partner and I, Bob Wilkins, a good cat, still alive, but not logging anymore, thankfully. International assassin. Well, they wouldn't sit and talk to you about it. The Denali plant, yeah, dude. Can you really ever truly trust an actor? Not unless you're willing to like trust but verify, you know. A drill sergeant, that one would be tough because those guys remain pretty straight laced. So I'd have to come up with a more complex story for like a drill sergeant. I'd have to be like a drill sergeant that was like wronged by the system or something, you know. And that's a tougher thing to sell because those guys are pretty clean cut. Typically, I find the drill sergeants that I've met. Hey, what time is it? Like, how long until Onion Nugget starts? How much time do I got? Time to get a watch. I got over an hour. Well, I need over an hour. So, anyway, I'm going to end this. It's been fun. I'll see you guys next